Imvula ecifana ba izosusa kule mission yethu. Imvula ecifana izosigodolisa namhlanje. Imvula ecifana izosincancazelisa namhlanje. Nakanye servants. Silapha servants ukuzokothula imanifesto yethu. A people's manifesto. Therefore, akukho mvula, akukho langa, akukho nanye into enosusa kule mission. Sifuna uthatha elithuba and give our utmost respect, our utmost appreciation to the Chief Apostle, the spiritual head. We want to greet you, our Father, because we know without you would not be gathered here today. We also want to greet the royal leadership. In the policy conference of the ATM, we said the word traditional leaders has got an element of undermining royalty. That is why we recognize that you are royalty, because you have royal blood. In your royal blood, we know that within that blood lies the wisdom of our forefathers.
With the royal family, he comes with the royal leaders. Ukumkani undlovyezwe. Ndlovyezwe. Ndlovyezwe. Thank you very much. Secondly, I would like to introduce our own. When we introduce the president of the APC, he is no stranger to us as ATM. He is no visitor to us as ATM. He is one of us. I would like to welcome and introduce President of the APC, President Themba Godi. Thank you very much. According to the list that I'm given, ukhona umama wesizwe, umama unosizwe. Can we please welcome our mother, umama unosizwe? We also have Unkosi Ubungaliwile from the OR Tambo area. Nkosi Ubungaliwile. Pata. We also have got Councillor Pato from Port St. John's. You are welcome to my father. We also have got, I think these two that I'm going to introduce are also no strangers to us as TACC and ATM. They are our social partners. We have got Mr. Laki and Umama Uteri Mukwena. You are welcome to my father. Thank you very much. Later on, I will be introducing all the other royal families and traditional leaders that are here, and also the South African Council of Messianic Churches and Religious Leaders. I will do that later on. Tata Utwaku, 7 Twaku, Kausi Shukumisele as a stadium as we continue with our program.
Tio, mama, Tio. Tio, mama, Tio. Servants! Hakeni lunke. Hakeni lunke. Here, izophatha i-ATM awuyona izophatha akhe niluke akhe niluke wo 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 oh ATM oh ATM awuyona akhe niluke akhe niluke wo 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 oh ATM oh ATM awuyona izo Zungula yawazi umthetho ngumthetho sithi Zungula yawazi umthetho ngumthetho sasithiniwe kuthetha uyawazi umthetho ngumthetho sasithiniwe kuthetha uyawazi umthetho ngumthetho Zungula uyawazi umthetho ngumthetho sithi Zungula uyawazi umthetho ngumthetho sasithiniwe kuthetha uyawazi umthetho ngumthetho
Okay.
sasithiniwe kuthetha sithi Zungula uyawazi yini safethu sithi Zungula uyawazi Stella usikhokhele Zungula endawo esikuyo Stella usikhokhele Zungula endawo
Peace in our land.
Peace in our lifetime.
Peace in our lifetimes.
Peace in our land.
One God.
One human race.
One human race.
One God.
Xa ibimvula etheni nale.
Ifunani.
Imvula ecifana ba izosusa kule mission yethu. Imvula ecifana izosigodolisa namhlanje. Imvula ecifana izosincancazelisa namhlanje. Nakanye servants. Silapha servants ukuzokothula imanifesto yethu. A people's manifesto. Therefore akukho mvula, akukho langa, akukho nanye into enosusa kule mission. Sifuna uthatha elithuba and give our utmost respect, our utmost appreciation to the chief apostle, the spiritual head. We want to greet you, our Father, because we know without you would not be gathered here today. We also want to greet the royal leadership. In the policy conference of the ATM, we said the word traditional leaders has got an element of undermining royalty. That is why we recognize that you are royalty, because you have royal blood. In your royal blood, we know that within that blood lies the wisdom of our forefathers, the wisdom of Osikukune, the wisdom of Oyinsa, the wisdom of Ompondomse, the wisdom of all of our kings and queens who ruled our country. That is why sibuphakamisa ubukhosi. Dlovyezwe. Dlovyezwe. Sifuna again utata elithuba and greet the faith leaders. We know that God speaks to you and you speak to the people. There is no way in which we can have a peaceful country without the faith leaders. We want to appreciate your presence and your commitment towards the ATM. I also want to greet all of the structures, the ATM from the NEC up until the branch level. Greet the women and the youth leagues, and greet our alliance partner, the APC, as well as all of the political parties that are gathered here today. It is in that spirit, with the political parties being in attendance, into esiyithethayo is that we are showing ukuba this is the time to put the people first. There is one thing that has been implanted kuthi bantu bamnyama, is that when we see us wearing different regalias in politics, we think that we are enemies, whereas we are not enemies. The enemy yethu should be unemployment, crime, poverty, and zonke izinto ezihlupha abantu, not each other. Greet all of the civil formations that are here namhlanje, and all of the protocol, I want it to be observed. But before we proceed, I want to greet the most important people namhlanje, servants. 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 Today, we will not be dwelling on what is wrong. We know what is wrong in our country. Now, what we need to focus, it is the solutions. Because it will not help that for the past how many years we've been speaking about what is wrong in the country. However, we are not saying this is the way forward. The ATM is here to say this is the way forward. Now, the way forward, servants, in South Africa, is that you need to realize, ukuba, if politicians are there to serve you. If there's one thing that we need to correct, it is that many people, when they see politicians, they see celebrities, they do not see their servants. People they should be dictating to, ukuba, they must fix their problems. They see people they want to take selfies with, as if ukutata selfie nomtu fixes a pothole. Ukutata selfie nomtu creates jobs. I want to tell you, ukuba, as a South African, reclaim your power. When you see a politician, you must know, ukuba, you are seeing istaka sako. You are seeing a person that needs to operate in whatever office to the benefit of your own interest. Do not make a mistake of thinking a politician is a celebrity. There is nothing that is a celebrity, a politician. Now, we need to understand, ukuba, in our view as the ATM, we've got a few issues that are of the top of the priority yethu. The first one, it is to restore the dignity of the royalty yethu. Sifuna ukubuyisela isidima kuwo onke amakhosi kwilizwe lethu. And we want to make sure ukuba we deal with the issue of crime. Crime is so brazen in our country to an extent whereby criminals, after committing crime, bazothatha imali abazibileyo, baziposte ku social media because they think they can get away with crime. We want to make it a point that people know under the ATM government, criminals will have no space in our society. There is no way criminals and the ATM government will coexist. We also want to make sure that there's law and order. There is no way you can have a peaceful, prosperous society without law and order. And we want to make sure ukuba we create jobs, because the jobs are there in South Africa, but the problem is that the manner in which the economy is structured, it is not for the benefit of the indigenous citizens. And job creation is of a top priority, as well as skills development and making sure that the education system yethu speaks to the minerals of this world, of this country. We can't have an education system engathethi ngobutyebi bethu. And we want to make it a point ukuba in South Africa there is something called a farming revolution, whereby kuwo wonke umhlaba okhoyo apho kukwazi ukulinywa khona makulinywe. And you want to build a capable state, because ukuba we do not have a capable state, it means you do not have a vehicle apho uzokwazi to govern our country. Now, the reason why you are saying we want to build a capable state, it is the fact that South Africa has no governance. There is no government in our country, because if there was a government, there would be no way that almost 50% of our country is dependent on social grants. If there was a government in our country, there is no way in which ogogo bethu bangalala outside of the post office befuna inkamnkam yabo bengayifumani. If there was a government, there is no way kungakhona load shedding kodwa sine coal eninzi kangaka. If there was a government, there is no way in which the SNDF amajoni would have a fire in their base, but ibe NGO that will come and provide relief to amajoni. Amajoni are there to protect our country. Now, if an army base is in fire and it takes an NGO to save Lamajoni, it means there's no government. That is why you are saying as the ATM, ukuba, we need to position the state as a key driver of development, provision of services, and the provision of the quality of life for all citizens. In doing that, we are saying, ukuba, let us not have a case whereby the government will outsource some of the functions to the private sector. Currently, we've got a government that has outsourced some of its functions, or most of its functions, to the private sector. There's going to be municipalities, provincial departments, and the national government employing people, but at the same time, the government will hire consultants to do the very same work that it has given people to do the work in terms of those functions. That is why we're saying, ukuba, we are not going to have any consultants for jobs that could be done by the government. And to building a capable state, let it be known, servants, ukuba, accountability is non-negotiable. Because once you have accountability, the ones that are in power are able to govern kakuhle. As you have seen, asidlali nge-accountability. And people must know, ukuba you are going to take imali, uyifake kumatras, we are there as the ATM, we will hold you accountable. Ukuba you are going to have a plane coming from the Middle East, landing up eBulembu without following the proper protocols, we are going to hold you accountable. If you are going to be a bank and you are going to manipulate the rand and cause widespread poverty to the millions of citizens who end up taking their lives because they cannot pay these loans that they've taken from these banks, we are going to hold you accountable. There is no way in which all of these departments are going to operate without accountability. We need to ask ourselves a question on this question of rand manipulation. Where was the Reserve Bank? Why did it take the Competition Commission to pick up ukuba the rand was manipulated? Whereas the Reserve Bank has got a mandate of protecting the financial integrity and the monetary policy of our country. Where was the Reserve Bank? That is why we are saying ukuba the state must do its work, and we are there as the ATM to make sure that all of that happens. And under the ATM government, we are going to lead a country that has uninterrupted service delivery. And we are going to make sure that our government is corrupt-free. And we are going to make sure ukuba e-grants are delivered on time. And e-grants are going to be delivered in the nearest location of the beneficiaries. You can't have abantu abadala having to take 4 or 5 taxis uyofumana i-grant, whereas i-grant iyakwazi ufikela kube iphushana. Why should we have this government edlulwa by the apartheid government? Because the apartheid government distributed grants to the nearest location ebantwini. How can you have a government abantu abantsundu ehlulwa into ayisenziwa ngabantu bocinezelo? In our view, as an organization, that is going to change. And us as the ATM, we are going to end the load shedding. Make it, masiyazi servants. This thing called the load shedding, it is deliberate. Do not believe in Tokuba we've got a problem when it comes to energy generation. It is deliberate because the one that is the president of the country, along with Usbari Wake and few of his friends, they want to destroy Eskom so that they come in with the IPPs in the energy market. Because in load shedding, it is done deliberately. Because the country is currently generating power using coal. We've got coal reserves that are more than 400 years in our country. Currently, each and every day, as we speak now, there are tons of trucks as here at Richards Bay transporting our coal. And this coal is going to Europe to provide electricity in Europe. But up in South Africa, we have to contend with 6, 8 or 10 hours a day without electricity. The reason why we have load shedding, it is because the power stations are not maintained. The power stations are there, but they are not maintained. As the ATM government, we are going to invest in the maintenance and the servicing of the power stations. Because we cannot be building Imodupi costing billions, and Imodupi is using coal, and Apa Sikalelwe ukuba are going to move away from coal. Whereas Europe and the other countries are taking coal from us every day. And if it happens, ukuba we need to move away from coal, what will happen to our people in Mpumalanga? Because the economy of Mpumalanga is dependent on coal. That is why, as the ATM, let it be known, ukuba, we do not agree with this thing, ukuba, we need to move away from coal. We need to invest in clean coal technologies, not moving away from coal. And you are going to make sure ukuba the SOEs, all of the state-owned enterprises, they pay market-related prices for each and every service that they are procuring. Currently, Eskom is paying over 1,000 rands per ton of coal from these private companies that have got evergreen contracts with Eskom, whereas the NASA recommended prices, it is 300 rands per ton of coal. The reason why Eskom and most of these SOEs are needing bailouts, it is because of the evergreen contracts. It is because we are paying higher prices than the market-related prices. That is why, as an organization, the first thing that we are going to do is to review all of the contracts and set aside all of the evergreen contracts that our SOEs are having. And lastly, on this issue, we are going to reposition South Africa as a gateway to Africa by making sure ukuba our ports, our road, our rail infrastructure is properly maintained. Previously, when companies wanted to bring their goods to the continent, they used to come to South Africa because we had excellent infrastructure. But currently, we do not have any infrastructure. That is why, as an organization, we're saying that is the top of the priority aid. On the question of royal and faith leaders, we're saying ukuba royal and faith leaders currently are not given meaningful space in nation building and the governance of our country. If you were to compare that to this country called the United Kingdom, there are some decisions that the parliament and the prime minister cannot take without the consultation and the blessing of the British monarch. But come to our country, you find that our kings, our queens, do not have a say in the governance of their own people. We are saying as the ATM, that is a problem. We are also saying it is a problem that we've got unequal treatment of royalty. And that creates an illusion ukuba amakumkani ethu akalingani, whereas uThixo in our view ubabeke ngokulingana because ubenze bonke bazinkumkani. That is why you are saying ukuba thina we need to change all of that and make sure ukuba there's equal treatment of ikumkani zethu. Also, the indigenous spiritual homes and traditional churches are neglected and sidelined. And also we've got a problem, especially in KZN, whereby there's a targeted killing of the royal leadership. Each and every day you wake up, ukuba kukhona inkosi ebuleweyo eKZN. That is a problem. So our commitment in this regard as an ATM, we're saying we're going to give full recognition, respect, dignity, and support to all kingdoms, chiefs, kings, royal leadership in the governance of Abantu Bab. And we are going to put in place systems to ensure that all of the royal kingdoms that were destroyed by the colonial regime are reinstated and formally recognized. And we are going to capacitate and provide necessary support for royal leaders to handle conflict and dispute in their localities. And we are going to promote equitable recognition, respect, and support to all of the religious formations. And we are going to ensure ukuba the African indigenous spirituality, spiritual institutions, traditional healers are recognized, respected by the government in the same manner in which the mainstream religious organizations are respected. And we are going to ensure ukuba the African indigenous spirituality is taught from the primary schools to higher institutions of higher learning, because the African spirituality is our way of life as Africans. And we are going to ensure ukuba we protect and promote the freedom of religion and family integrity. And we're going to ensure Kuba, the faith leaders and royal leaders drive the moral regeneration program in schools, juvenile prisons, and communities. We've got a problem of immoral degeneration in our country. The unfortunate incident that we saw up in Nyobeni last year when abantwana bethu passed on because they were consuming alcohol at the young age of 13 years means ukuba we've got a problem. Because ukuba we do not build the moral character of our country, it means the country does not have a future. That is why we want the royal leadership and the faith leadership to play a meaningful role in building the moral character of our country. And we're going to provide land and support to churches. On the question of land, rural development, and food security, the first issue that we have is that there's landlessness amongst the African majority and high levels of land that are kept by the minority. And there's a lack of development in the rural areas. And we've got a food security that is anchored on the private sector. If food security that is anchored on the private sector means ukuba most of the farms are owned privately by a few farmers. And these farms are the ones that are working with retailers in producing and distributing food. We're saying as the ATM, we need to change all of that. And the manner in which we're going to change all of that is that we're going to make rural communities to be vibrant, sustainable, and economically active. And we're going to create jobs in the rural areas and make it sustainable for abantu to stay in the rural areas instead of seeking better opportunities as dolopin. And we are going to work with royal leadership to ensure sustainable rural development programs. And most importantly, we are going to embark on a farming revolution to ensure that all households are able to farm. Sikhula kukhona amasimi, sikhula kulinywa ezigadini, sikhula uhulumente e-provider i-tractor ukuba makulinywe. But currently, none of that is happening. We're saying as the ATM, next year, on the top of the priority yethu, is that immediately we ascend to the union buildings next year. On the question of farming, we are going to make sure there is no land apho sikwazi ukutyala khona ekungazutyalwa khona. Our country has so much arable land that is sitting idle. We are going to make it a point all households ziyalima, because we want to put into practice what was said by Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara said, we need to consume what we produce. What we're saying as the ATM, masitye ukutya okulinywe sithi. We are not going to have umhlaba apho sikwazi ulima khona singalimi. Akho mntu ungazulima, uthanda ungathandi uzolima. And okulima kwakho uzoncediswa by the assistant agricultural practitioners. There's more than 100,000 of young agricultural graduates in our country. They do not have jobs because there is no work in that space. We are saying as a party, those agricultural graduates are going to spearhead this farming revolution by assisting each and every person to farm. You know, the reason why some of abantu are getting sick, it is because some of these foods that they are buying, they are ukutya that are not really healthy. But we're not going to get into that debate now. But rest assured, when you eat the food that you have planted in your own garden, health awaits you. That is why we want you to eat what you have planted as a citizen. And we are going to ensure ukuba there's expropriation of land without compensation to ensure food security, adequate human settlements, and economic participation of the natives. And the last one on this pillar 7, it is the issue that we've got so many farms or emerging farmers in our country, particularly African farmers. But you find that their produce does not have a space in these retailers, because a retailer in Queenstown, a retailer in Port St. John's would rather want to buy produce in Free State or another province. As the ATM was saying, ukuba kukona a retailer, whether it's ShopRite, it is Spar, it is Pick and Pay, it is Woolworths, if there's such a retailer upper Emonti, 50% of their produce must be sourced from local farmers. We are not going to allow a case whereby our emerging farmers do all of this work, but they are not going to be given space. In Botswana, just next door, there is a law, okanye it is law, ukuba all of these retailers, they must buy 50% of their produce from local emerging farmers. The same thing must happen here, because in Botswana, it is yielding good results. On the question of education and skills development, we're saying ukuba we've got an education system that is not responding to the needs of the economy. We've got a very high drop-up rate of our learners, and we've got infrastructure in our schools that is dilapidated. We've got learners that cannot read for meaning or read for understanding, and that is a failure of the early childhood development. And we've got an outdated curriculum that is producing job seekers instead of job creators. We are saying as the ATM, our commitments are as follows. We are going to ensure a quality education system that is free, compulsory, transformative, and is able to respond to the needs of our economy as well as our mineral wealth. The reason why we want to tie the education system to the mineral wealth, it is because uThixo usibeke in the southern tip of the continent, and he has given this southern tip of the continent gold, platinum, coal, manganese, and all of these resources. But why is it that almost all of our students, all of our learners, they've never even seen something that is called a gold? There is no learner in our schooling system that is able to refine a diamond into the product that is used. We are saying as the ATM, ukuba, we need to educate or have an education system that speaks to our mineral wealth, so that we do not have to go and export raw materials and they come back to us as expensive as finished products, and now we are just consumers. And we're going to accelerate a free skills-based decolonized education system that promotes entrepreneurship, so that we do not produce job seekers. We want to produce job creators. And we are going to deal with this corruption ekunefsas. It cannot be that our children cannot get money to go to school, whereas UNEFSAS is funding close to 150,000 ghost students. Ghost students meaning akukho mfundi, akukho nto, but they say they are funding 150,000 students, whereas those people, zimali eyakubo. We are going to deal decisively with that corruption epakunefsas. And we are going to ensure ukuba the buildings in the inner city are able to be transformed into world-class student accommodation for our learners. Because it cannot be that our learners are going to struggle with accommodation, whereas there are buildings in the inner city. Some of those buildings are hijacked. Some of those buildings, and all of these things. we are going to convert all of those buildings into student accommodation. And we are going to increase infrastructure development, in infrastructure investment, which is libraries, skills development centers, other educational facilities in the townships and the villages. Because we, as an organization, we can't accept this normality. Ukuba, when you go to a township, you are most likely to find a tavern instead of finding a library. You are most likely going to find a smokolo than to find a skills development center. We are saying, ukuba, we need to invest heavily in libraries, skills development centers in the respective townships. And we are going to make sure, ukuba, we improve the quality of the infrastructure in our schooling system. Because when you go to our public schools, you know, they are depressor in public schools because the toilets are not working, and the windows are broken. When it's winter, it's cold, abantwana are cold, simply because the infrastructure does not give an infrastructure that is conducive to learning. Go to the private school, utusangena payana, you see, but this is an environment of learning and your mind gets to be opened. Whereas when you go to the public schools, the opposite happens. We are going to correct that as the ATM. And we are going to reinstate and prioritize sports, arts and culture programs in schools in order to facilitate holistic development. There can't be this thing that we see now whereby sports are sadlalwa in our schools. We are going to put a very, very strong investment in terms of the sports. And we are going to reopen the teacher colleges that we used to know so that there are rigorous training programs to ensure ukuba the educators are well equipped and with the necessary skills and knowledge. We are going to deal again decisively with crime in the schools. It can't be that we are going to have teachers that are afraid of learners. We are going to make sure ukuba all of the schools we deal decisively with crime, because abantwana that go to school must not fear when they are at school. Our young teachers, when they are in school, they must not fear their learners. That is why we need to deal with the problem of crime. And we are going to involve again the royal and faith leadership in terms of building the moral character of the learners. On the question of youth and early child development, the reality is that there's lack of economic opportunities for young people, and there's hopelessness and widespread depression amongst young people, particularly those who are above the age of 35, because the laws that are there, they make young people that are above the age of 35 as if are neglected, because all of the funding opportunities for businesses, okanye all of the job opportunities, kuba khona that limitation ye age 35. And there's widespread alcohol and substance abuse for abantu abacha. And we are going to, as an organization, as a solution, prioritize early childhood development facilities from the ages of 0 up until 7 years. And we are going to train and fund our young people to be entrepreneurs instead of becoming job seekers. We are going to prioritize the holistic development of the youth, addressing not only the academic qualifications, but the practical skills, resilience, mental health awareness, and emotional health, as well as problem solving. And we are going to engage with educational institutions, private sector, community engagement, community organizations to create a collaborative ecosystem that supports youth development. On the question of sustainable human settlements and basic services, we are saying ukuba there's a problem now of communities that are deprived of clean, safe water. There's lack of quality living facilities that are closer to the areas of economic activity. And there are housing backlogs, social and economic segregation. And we've got people that have to cross rivers in order to access schools as well as hospitals. And we have many informal settlements which do not have quality, safe living. And as a solution to that, as an organization, we are going to provide safe, clean water for the citizens. We are going to speed up the provision of title deeds for all of the land and houses that the people own. And we are going to drive the economic development in the rural areas so that people are not forced to move to the urban areas for economic opportunities. And we are going to provide housing that is inclusive, integrated with provision of social and economic amenities such as schools, community halls, healthcare facilities, parks, recreation centers, places of worship, as well as job opportunities. And most importantly, we are going to expropriate all of the hijacked, dilapidated inner city buildings to be transformed to world-class, affordable, quality living facilities situated to the places close to economic activity. You will recall that what apartheid did, it took abantu to the places that were further from economic activity. People bethu have to travel 40, 50 kilometers in order to go to work, simply because the apartheid government did that. We're saying, ukuba, we cannot have the inner city buildings being defined by lawlessness, being defined by being hijacked. Those inner city buildings must be defined by world-class accommodation so that a person does not have to wake up at 5 in the morning if they want to get to work at 8 a.m. And this will also solve this problem of our parents not being able to parent, because abazali now need to leave their homes at 5 a.m. ukuze bafike emsebenzini ngo-8. And when they leave their work at 5 p.m., they only get home at 8 p.m., meaning they've got no time to spend with their children. And the parenting of their children is now left to the social media. It is left to abanye abantu. That is why in this formation, in this program that we're going to have, it will assist us. It will assist to restore the family unit. On the question of health and social services, there is poorly managed health and underfunded public health systems. There is a dire shortage of medicine, essentials for quality healthcare facilities. There is aging public healthcare infrastructure. There is lack of access of healthcare, especially in rural areas. And there's a neglect of indigenous healing practices. Now, to solve all of this, as a part, we are going to deliver quality, affordable social services to all of the citizens. And we are going to make it worthwhile for all of the health practitioners, whether it is doctors and nurses, to be able to practice in health facilities located in rural areas, so that ungabi nogqirha abangafuni uyosebenza ezilalini. It needs to be made worthwhile for them to service abantu in the villages. And we are going to make sure ukuba there are mobile health clinics that are brought to the villages, so that abantu do not have to travel many kilometers to access clinics. And we are going to make sure ukuba we prioritize the issue of the clinical associates and make sure ukuba the recommendations of the former public protector are implemented in that regard. And we are going to invest in herbalists and clinical education, and we empower the indigenous healers. And there's going to be full employment of environmental health practitioners throughout the country in order to deal with this problem of fake, expired, and rejected goods that are sold to our people. We've got a problem of our people being sold foods that are not worth human consumption. Now, when we hire these environmental health practitioners, they are going to inspect all establishments to make sure that there is no food that is sold to the people that is not safe for human consumption. And we are going to make sure that there's a wide-scale crackdown on all of the fake doctors that are masquerading as registered medical practitioners. Currently, there are many people that are practicing in our communities. We are going to make sure that thing is going to be a thing of the past. And most importantly on this pillar, we are going to make sure sanitary towels are free. The sanitary towels are going to be free. And we are going to focus especially in the provision of free sanitary towels in the townships and the villages. Because impilo yabantu ababhinqileyo is a top priority for us. On the question of empowerment of women and other vulnerable groups, violence and femicide, ensuring stricter penalties for perpetrators. And we are going to enforce a principle equal. Going to be doing the same work, but because one is a male, is going to be paid more. The other one, because they are a female, they are going to be paid less. Those companies that are discriminating, they must know under the ATM government that discrimination will be a thing of the past. And we are going to establish specialized units with law enforcement to handle cases of gender-based violence and child abuse promptly and sensitively. And we are going to advocate for accessibility standards in public spaces and workspaces to ensure inclusivity for all of the people living with disability. And we are going to ensure we develop and enforce policies that encourage employment, empowerment of individuals with disabilities in all various sectors. On the question of the economy, we need servants to realize the first problem with our economy in our country is that we've got an economy that is dominated by oligopolies. Our country's economy is under the hands of very few companies. And you find that all of these companies are all owned by few families. Now, these oligopolies in all industries, they are dominating almost 90% of the market share. That is the first problem. Now, this oligopoly monopoly economy that we're having creates the high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in our country. And we've got a problem as well of a mineral wealth that does not translate to wealth for our people. You are going to go to Mpumalanga, they'll tell you, Ukuba, who are the province of coal. But when you look at the lives of the people in Mpumalanga, you do not see the wealth of coal. Rather, you see the sicknesses that are coming by the very same coal. That is a problem. And we've got a problem of a government spending that is pro-big business. The government has got a budget over 2 trillion rands per annum. And this government is spending more than 80% of that budget to big business. Small businesses need to scramble for more than 20% of the market share. And we've got a problem again of a rand manipulation. The banks in our country are so arrogant to an extent that they can manipulate the rand and the Reserve Bank will do nothing and the government will do nothing. You know, there's a report that is speaking about the rand manipulation, not even something that has been said by the Minister of Finance. Simply because the banks have got so much power over the government. And I want to touch briefly on the question of rand manipulation. Rand manipulation is economic treason, because the rand manipulation has caused widespread and systematic poverty to our citizens. Let me tell you how. What these banks have done, they've made it a point, or they colluded and made it ukuba we need, or the companies operating in our country, they need to buy the dollar at high prices. Now, when these companies buy the dollar at high prices, it means the services and the products that are provided by these companies, the prices are going to increase. Now, once there's an increase in the prices, it causes inflation, which is the increase of prices. Now, that inflation, the Reserve Bank responds to inflation by increasing the repo rates. Now, once you increase the repo rates, it means the interest rates are going to be increased. Meaning, for all of the bonds, all of the car loans, all of the personal loans that you are going to have to pay higher prices as a result of a rand manipulation. That is why the question of rand manipulation, we need to call it what it is. It is economic treason. And all of these banks that have committed economic treason, number one, they should not be allowed to practice. They should not be allowed, or licenses zabo ziqhubeke, whereas they've caused economic treason. Secondly, the executives of these banks, they need to be criminally prosecuted, because they cannot be causing widespread poverty to our people and nothing happens. And what about this fine? Ukuba, they are going to be fined 43 million. What is 43 million to banks that were making almost R1 trillion a day? Go to America, go to the United Kingdom. Each and every bank that has been found, ukuba, they committed rand manipulation or the currency manipulation, they were fined in the region of billions. Come to South Africa, it is suggested ukuba they need to pay millions. That is nonsense. Into esingazuyenza asuzufihla amakhuba xa kuzolinywa. It is nonsensical ukuba institutions that led to our citizens taking their lives being fined a mere 43 million. 43 million is not even, it's nothing to these banks, because these banks are making above R1 billion profit per year, and you are only finding them 43 million. That is nonsensical. We've also got a problem of illicit financial flows, whereby companies are going to drain our country by not invoicing in South Africa. They are going to systematically drain our economy and take our profits, take our economy to other countries. However, our solution, servants, are as follows. The first one, ukuba, under the ATM government, all of the service providers will be paid on time. We've got a problem whereby we've got SMMEs, when they want their invoices to be paid, their invoices are going to be paid after 120 days, or to a certain extent, kufuneka babhatale intshontsho for their invoices to be paid. That is going to end under the ATM government. The other solution that we have is that under the ATM government, we are going to extend the maritime territory in the Cape of Good Hope Sea Route in order to generate toll revenue. Egypt is making more than 100 billion US dollars per year from the Suez Canal, because every ship efuna udoka in the Suez Canal, it pays a toll fee. But come to the Cape of Good Hope, you realize ukuba, as a country, we are not making any use of that economic opportunity. And we are going to transform the structure of the economy to enable various players and remove barriers to entry for the economic participation in some industries. And we are going to enact a government policy that says government spending, at least 50% of the government spending must be towards SMMEs, because that is the way in order to create jobs and boost local economies. And we are going to make it compulsory for the local processing of our minerals, and we export only finished goods. And we are going to abolish the labor brokers, and we are going to have harsh penalties against all companies that are exploiting workers. Currently, we've got companies that violate all of the laws, whether it is labor, it is immigration, simply because they want to exploit workers. We are saying as the ATM, those companies are going to face the full might of the law, and we are going to abolish these labor brokers, because a labor brokering system is a modern day slavery. And you are going to establish a state-owned bank that is connected to communal banks to reshape the banking sector structure and provide marginalized communities with ownership and access to financial services. And we are going to regulate the digital industry, such as Uber or Airbnb, so that they are in line with our national interests. Currently, our drivers, which is our brothers and sisters that are driving Uber, they are not safe, they are neglected, they are marginalized. And when you look at how these companies are operating in other countries, Uber, when it's operating in the United Kingdom, a driver is regarded as a worker, meaning they get all of the benefits of working for Uber. But come to South Africa,